this story is about the moments before there were 3 stars on this jersey. The pits of my eyes were dry by the time Kylian Mbappé stepped up to take the first penalty kick for France. It was 12:49 p.m. The rivers I had cried for 120 minutes had dried along my cheeks, and I couldn't stop shaking. If you start feeling your arm tingle, call 911, Haley texted me when I told her I thought my heart was going to burst. She had seen me cry many times in September. I would wake up in the middle of the night, gasping for air, my body covered in sweat, and she'd reassure me instinctively, "Darling, the children are okay. Your parents are alive. We'll be in the new house before Christmas." And I'd moan, "It's not that. It's Messi. I'm never going to see him play for Argentina again." And the tears wouldn't stop flowing. The morning of the final, Haley left early with the children for her mom's house. After weeks of watching me suffer through an unexpected loss, excruciating wins, and agonizing penalty kick shootouts, she understood the stakes. For 29 days, I had skipped the gym, canceled plans, left early and worked late, had little fun, and endured inextinguishable anguish for 90 minutes over and over again. But after that opening loss to Saudi Arabia, we had found a winning formula, and we could not risk breaking Kabbalah. I could not be the reason Argentina lost the World Cup final. It may not make sense to you yet, but every Argentinian understands it. When your team wins, you must watch the next game in exactly the same way, wearing exactly the same thing, drinking exactly the same drink, and scratching exactly the same spot on your left thigh, or risk unleashing God's fury. This is Kabbalah, and I'd already risked too much. The week of the semifinal against Croatia, we were in New Jersey visiting my family. I had planned to watch the game in my parents' apartment alone, wearing my Argentina jersey and a scarf, a flag draped over my legs, just as I had watched the wins against Mexico, Poland, Australia, and the Netherlands. But then I thought of my grandfather watching alone downstairs, my nono, the man I told many of you about in November, who is the reason I tell stories and I love this beautiful game. Before moving away in 2011, I'd spent a decade watching CONMEBOL qualifiers, World Cups, Champions Leagues, and La Liga, Serie A, and Premier League matches with Nono at the kitchen table. He had said every World Cup since 2010 would be his last, and after turning 85 on December 4th, Qatar's likely was. Instinct told me that he wanted me there beside him, his eldest grandson, despite the wrath we both knew we could incur by breaking winning tradition. So I went downstairs as the kids napped and Haley watched alone upstairs, and Argentina won 3-0. Maybe I could go and watch the final with Haley and her family, and that way if we win, we can all celebrate together. That's what I thought naively as I wrapped my Argentina flag around my shoulders and watched her dress the kids in their jerseys before closing the basement door. But Haley understood, as she always has, and encouraged me to stay strong. At 10 a.m., the moment to suffer had arrived. By the time the ball reset after Angel Di Maria scored Argentina's second goal in the 36th minute, the burden had started to lighten. I felt this feeling that is foreign for me when watching important sports games. I think it was happiness. From the opening whistle of every game after the loss against Saudi Arabia, I had felt like I was being crushed under the weight of a container ship. At halftime against France with Argentina up 2-0, Haley texted me to ask how I was doing, and I replied, "If this result holds, I'll go there for the ceremony at the end. I want to be with you and the children." I grabbed my car keys, I pulled out a pair of jeans, my belt, my socks and sneakers, and I put them all beside me on the couch, ready to run out the garage door once the final whistle blew. Gawadas seem like nonsense when you're winning. They make you feel childish and insignificant. "Brian, you are too smart to believe in this," I tell myself. "You have a master's degree and a subscription to the New Yorker. Nothing bad's going to happen because you put on your socks. Superstition is for the poor, the uneducated, the unbelieving, and yet in the 81st minute, moments after Mbappé scored an otherworldly goal to level the score 2-2, I tossed my car keys across the room. I threw all of my clothes off the couch. I fell to my knees, begging God to forgive me for the ignorance of believing that I couldn't affect the outcome of the World Cup final. And he heard me. With the weight of 100 million Argentinians and Bangladeshis on his shoulders, and an entire universe that had tried to will him to the one trophy that had evaded him over his 19-year career, Lionel Messi was finally a World Cup champion. The tears that had dried in my eyes when Mbappé stepped up to take his penalty erupted like lava from a dormant volcano. They enveloped everything I touched. After Haley FaceTimed me with Alba and Enzo, the first call I made was to my grandfather. He didn't answer, so I called my mom, begging her to give him the phone. When she got to him, Nono was in the backyard. He had turned the game off at 2-2 and walked outside, fearing he would collapse from a heart attack. I told him over tears, "No, lo hicimos, somos campeones, ganamos el mundial." And he and I cried together, a million miles away from each other, but in that moment closer than we'd ever been before. I've repeated those same words 10,000 times since December 18th. Somos campeones del mundo, no lo puedo creer, somos campeones del mundo, carajo. The World Cup final in Qatar is already being hailed as the best in history. A clash of titans, Messi and Mbappé swinging back and forth like heavyweight boxers. This is what Qatar had paid for. Beyond anything that happened on the field, this was meant to be a spectacle, with elaborate walkouts and ceremonies, songs and costumes, rich and powerful men and women in the stands that the camera scanned for unendingly, just like in every important final of every important sport in the world. In the midst of my elation, I couldn't help thinking about those things, of who this game was really for, of the thousands of Argentinians who sold their cars and emptied their life savings to travel to Qatar and who somehow got tickets to the game. It almost seems like a glitch in the system. Tickets to the Super Bowl start at $6,800. Seats behind the goal for the final in Qatar were $33,000. You and I are not supposed to be inside these modern-day coliseums. It's baffling now that I've had time to reflect that they even let in the 22 players who battle, giving everything for 120 minutes, as if the spectacle were forced to make way for the inconvenience of the game itself. And yet, despite everything I know Qatar was, the bloodshed, the tears cried by orphan sons who gave their fathers so richer men could make their statement to the world, I am still overcome with emotion. Every 10 minutes I burst into tears at the memory of Gonzalo Montiel scoring the winning penalty and Messi kissing the trophy. Haley told me that when Enzo woke us up at 2:30 the night after the final, I whispered in her ear, "Campeones del mundo." I lament not being in Argentina right now with my aunts and uncles, cousins and friends to make memories of this celebration, because I know this joy will not last forever. The Men's World Cup has been played nearly every 4 years since 1930, 22 times in total. Argentina has made 6 finals, including the first and the most recent, and won 3 times. It's very possible, like my nono, that I will not see Argentina victorious again before I die. So I pray that God will send me forward in time, blast me through a machine at this very moment so that I can immediately begin to feel nostalgia. I long to tell my grandchildren the story of the 2022 World Cup final, just as Nono told me of the finals of 1950 and 1958, 1970 and 1986. And when my grandchildren gather around my feet before the 2058 final held on a lunar colony or North Korea, and they beg me to tell them about Messi and Di Maria, about the gray-haired men with thick glasses and mustaches they've seen on Netflix, reminiscing about that December in Qatar when they were immortal, this is what I'll say. I watched alone from the basement. After 90 minutes, I was on death's doorstep, moments from leaving your grandmother a widow and your parents orphans. But by a miracle, God saved me. I drove to your parents as fast as I could. I hugged them and I cried with them in my arms. There were no other Argentinians around, so instead of sharing a mate or drinking Malbec late into the night, I went with our family to eat at a Mexican restaurant on Clinton Highway, where the owner gifted us raspberry tequila shots to toast the victory. But my suffering had finally been rewarded. My nightmare was over. I saw Messi champion of the world, and I will never, ever forget it.